Welcome back, students who are taking Math for Business and Finance and Math applications, and we are working through the Chapter 12 word problems, and this here is the second video. So um, we're going to be working, let's see, we finished on 12:15, so let's move to 12:17. And I'm going to kind of move through these at a lot quicker pace. Because we do have quite a few, and like I said, it's pretty repetitive. So let's continue on here. Lee Willis loaned Andre Chin $16,000 to open Snippet, hair salon. After 6 years, Audrey will repay Lee with a 8% interest compounded quarterly. How much will Lee receive at the end of 6 years? So, in your mind, here's the timeline. Present value is loaning $16,000 for 6 years at 8% interest, and it's being compounded quarterly, which is 4 times a year. So 6 years times 4 is 24 periods. 8% interest divided by 4 is 2% interest per compounding period. So when I look at the future value chart, because that's what I want to know, is I want to know how much at the end of 6 years. So I look at 2% for 24 periods. And so up here, I'm at 2%, 24 periods, that's 1.6084. So my factor is 1.6084. And so I take my 16,000 and multiply it by the 1.6084, and I get, let's see here, 16,000 times 1.6084. I end up with $25,734.40. Okay, simple, like I said, very repetitive. 12-19. John Rowe, an employee of the Gap, loans $3,000 to another employee at the store. So that's the present value, the principal. He will be repaid at the end of 4 years. That's the time. His interest rate is 6%, so that's the rate. Compounded quarterly, which is 4 times. How much will John be repaid? Same as the previous problem. Okay. 4 years at 4 times a year is 16 periods. 6% divided by 4 periods is 1.5%. So when I go up to the future value chart and I look for the 1.5% column, and I am looking for 16 periods, I have the factor of 1.2690. So my factor here is 1.2690. So I take the 1.2690 and I multiply it by the $3,000. Zero, 0.83. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I end up with 3,000. Sorry. So I end up with $3,807. Okay. 21. Security National Bank is quoting a 1-year certificate of deposit with an interest rate of 5% compounded semi-annually. Joe Saver purchased a $5,000 CD. What is the CD's effective rate to the nearest 100th of a percent? use tables in the Business Math Handbook. Okay, so if we're going to be looking at the APY, remember the APY is the effective rate is the interest for 1 year over the principal. That's the formula. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to find out what the interest is for the 1 year. Okay, so if let's see here, if I have a 1-year certificate and it's compounded semi-annually, that's twice a year, so 1 year times 2, so there's 2 compounding periods. And if the interest rate is 5%, right, I divide by 2 to get 2.5%. Now this 2.5% is not on the chart in the textbook, right? It's not in the table in the textbook, okay? Because it goes from 1.5 to 2 and then jumps to 3, okay? Now you could figure it out by, in this case here, there was 2 periods. I could take the midpoint between those 2 and use that as the factor, but that's doing a lot of math when you can actually just look it up in the Business Math Handbook. And if you don't know how to do that, go back to the video for Drill Problems Business Math Handbook and watch that video. Okay, I had said in there I'm not going to reproduce all of the charts, all of the tables in order to be able to do these problems. So I'm just going to do a lookup, and I'm just going to use the factor. So you look up the factor yourself, and you'll see that the factor for 2.5% and 2 compounding periods is 1.0506. If you didn't find that on the table, then you're doing something wrong, or you're not understanding. Well, obviously, if you don't understand, you're not doing it right, but you should come up with that same factor. And if you don't understand how to get to that factor, like I said, watch that video or contact an instructor. Okay, so that's the factor, and we have so it's 1.0506, and then we're going to multiply that times the $5,000 CD. Okay, so we end up with let's see here, 0.3525. So we end up with a total amount of $5,253. Remember, that's principal plus interest. Okay, so we figured out what the future value is. That's principal plus interest, but we're only interested in the interest portion of the APY. So we have to subtract out the 5,000, and that tells us our interest is $253. Now, with the interest being $253, now we can figure out the APY. Okay, because the interest for 1 year is 253, and that's over 5,000, which was the principal. And when we divide the 253 by 5,000, we end up with 0.0506 as a decimal, and to convert it to a percentage, we end up with 5.06. Let me do that math again. 253 divided by 5,000. Oops. 253 divided by 5,000. Yep, that's exact. 0.0506. Okay, so we end up with 5.06%. Okay, as the APY. Now remember that the APY is different. The effective rate is different from the nominal rate. If you'll recall from previous videos, the nominal rate is the stated rate, right? The nominal rate in this case was 5%. That's the stated rate, okay? But the APY is going to be different. It's going to be greater because of why? Due to the compounding effect, interest on interest. So that's why we end up with 5.06 versus the 5%. Okay. So with that, I'm going to stop there. And I mean, if you didn't understand that, go back and watch the theory videos, especially that last one, which talks about the APY. Okay, and if you still have any questions, then telephone and speak with an instructor. But for now, I'm going to call it quits for this video and see you in the next one.